found Private Daniel Reeves at dawn. He was sitting upright in the sand, 3 miles from base camp, boots missing, rifle untouched beside him, eyes open. He was breathing, but he wouldn't speak. Not for 3 days. And when he finally did, when they finally got the words out of him, the Army classified his statement, marked its psychological episode under combat stress, filed it away, buried it. But one of the nurses who sat with him that night wrote down what he said, word for word. She kept that piece of paper for 30 years before she gave it to her daughter. This is what Private Daniel Reeves said happened on the night of January 19th, 1991, in the Iraqi desert during Operation Desert Storm. To understand what Daniel experienced, you first need to understand where he was and what that land has always meant to the people who lived there for thousands of years. January 1991. The Gulf War is in full motion. On August 2, 1990, Saddam Hussein's Iraqi military had rolled into Kuwait with over 100,000 troops. The world watched in disbelief. Within weeks, a coalition of 35 nations, led by the United States, began assembling the largest military force since World War II. Nearly 700,000 soldiers positioned in Saudi Arabia, waiting. The air campaign, Operation Desert Storm, officially began on January 17, 1991. The desert at night in that region is unlike anything most Western soldiers had ever experienced. There are no city lights for hundreds of miles. No landmarks. The terrain shifts constantly. Wind moves the dunes, erases tracks, swallows roads. Temperatures that hit 45 degrees Celsius in the afternoon would plunge near freezing after midnight. Soldiers described it as being on another planet. But the Iraqi and Kuwaiti locals, the Bedouin tribes who had lived in and around that desert for centuries, they described it differently. They called it Al-Ard al-Majura, the abandoned land. Not abandoned by people, abandoned by God. Because according to pre-Islamic Arabian tradition that stretches back over 3,000 years, certain stretches of desert between the Euphrates River and the Arabian Peninsula were considered cursed ground. Not metaphorically, literally. The Ghul. Long before soldiers ever set foot in that desert, something else already lived there. The Arabs called it the Ghoul. In Arabic, the word comes from gala, meaning to seize, to snatch, to murder. It is not a ghost, it is not a demon in the Western sense. The Ghoul is something older than both, a predator, a shapeshifter, a thing that lives at the edge of civilization and waits patiently for someone to wander too far from the group. According to ancient Bedouin folklore, the Ghoul dwells in graveyards, in ruins, in the open desert. It is always hungry, and it is never what it appears to be, a being made of smokeless fire, older than mankind, said to be one of the children of Iblis, the fallen one. It could look like anything it wanted, a lost child, a traveler in need of help. Most often it shows the shape of a beautiful woman, standing alone at the edge of a desert road, waiting. Bedouin poets wrote about it centuries ago. They said you could kill a ghoul with one clean strike, but only one. A second blow, and it simply stood back up. And they said that no matter what face it wore, no matter how convincing the disguise, there was always one thing it couldn't hide. Its feet were never human. The soldiers of the coalition had no idea they were camped on land the locals refused to enter after sunset. Private Daniel Reeves was about to find out why. Daniel Reeves was 22 years old, from Knoxville, Tennessee. He had been in country for 11 days when his unit was tasked with a forward observation assignment. A 4-man recon team positioned 8 miles ahead of the main coalition line near the Kuwaiti border. 4 men, 1 radio, 1 night. Their names, as Daniel later recalled them: Corporal Harris Chirat, the team leader, Martinez, Okafor, and Daniel himself. The assignment was simple: observe, report. Do not engage. They set up position at 2100 hours, 9 p.m., in a shallow depression between 2 sand ridges, concealed from the road. The wind was low. Visibility was good. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. Harris ran equipment checks. Martinez kept watch. Okafor made a bad joke about the food. Daniel wrote a letter home that he never finished. Then, at approximately 23:40 hours, Martinez grabbed Daniel's arm. "You see that?" Daniel raised his binoculars. At the far edge of the ridge line, maybe 400 meters out, there was a figure, standing, just standing, in the open desert, at midnight. Harris got on the radio immediately, requested intel on any coalition or civilian movement in the grid sector. Response came back in 60 seconds, nothing. No friendly units, no known civilians. Sector is clear. Harris looked through his scope again. The figure was still there. Had not moved. Had not looked in their direction. Just standing. Facing away from them. Toward the north. "Probably a local shepherd," Harris said. "Lost, maybe." But there were no sheep. No animals, no vehicle, no tent. Nothing but that figure, standing in 400 meters of open ground in the middle of the night in an active war zone. They watched it for 20 minutes. It did not move. And then Okafor said something that made Daniel's stomach drop. "Has it always been facing that direction? Because I could have sworn on a few minutes ago it was facing us." No one answered him, because no one was sure anymore. Harris made the call to stay put. They were not authorized to engage a non-combatant, and the figure, whoever it was, had not approached. Protocol said, "Observe." So they observed. But at 0:15 hours, 15 minutes past midnight, the radio crackled. Daniel's statement describes the moment exactly. It sounded like Martinez. Exactly like Martinez. The voice on the radio was saying to turn around, that there were contacts behind us, that we needed to fall back immediately. Harris started to respond, and then Martinez grabbed the radio out of his hand, because Martinez was sitting right next to us. Martinez hadn't said anything. Harris tried to raise base camp, static. Raised it again, more static. Then, a voice. Not command. Not any call sign they recognized, speaking in Arabic, soft, almost gentle, repeating the same phrase over and over. None of them spoke Arabic, but one of them, Okafor, who had grown up in a neighborhood in Chicago with a large Lebanese community, knew just enough to recognize a few words. He went very pale. "What is it?" Harris asked. Okafor said, "It's saying, come away from the others." Beat of silence. Wind. Daniel looked back toward the ridge line. The figure was gone. They swept the ridge with flashlights. Nothing. Swept the flanks. Nothing. Harris ordered everyone to form up tight. No one more than arm's length from the next man. They sat like that for 10 minutes. Then Martinez said, "Where's Okafor?" He had been right there 3 seconds ago between Martinez and Daniel. They called his name. No response. Harris fired a signal flare. In the red light, they saw footprints in the sand. Okafor's boots. walking away from the group, straight and steady, not running, heading north, toward where the figure had been standing. The footprints stopped after 60 feet. Just stopped, mid-stride, as if he had been lifted straight up. No body, no blood, no tracks returning, no tracks of anything else walking alongside him. Just his footprints. And then nothing. Harris immediately called for emergency extraction. This time the radio connected. Backup would be there in 45 minutes. 45 minutes. They began moving back toward the extraction point. South, back toward the main line. Harris in front, Martinez in the middle, Daniel rear. They moved fast. They did not speak. At the 12-minute mark, Martinez stopped walking. "That's Harris," he said, pointing ahead. Daniel looked. There was a figure ahead of them in the dark. The right height, right build, right silhouette. Walking at the same pace as their team, same boots, same uniform. But Harris was walking right in front of Martinez. "That's not Harris," Daniel said. The figure ahead turned its head just slightly, and in the moonlight, Daniel saw its face. He recognized it. It was Okafor, not injured, not lost, smiling, standing 60 meters ahead of them in a direction they had not come from, waiting calmly, as if he had always been there. "Okafor." Martinez moved forward immediately. Daniel grabbed his arm. Something was wrong with how it was standing. The weight was wrong. The legs were too long. And the smile, Daniel wrote later, was too wide. Like the face had too much space for the mouth. "Martinez, don't," Daniel said. And then the figure spoke, in Daniel's voice. "Martinez, come on, man, it's me, I'm right here." Perfect. His accent, his cadence, everything. Martinez froze. Harris turned around, saw the figure, raised his weapon. The thing, whatever it was, dropped the smile. And in the half second before Harris fired, Daniel said it changed. Not slowly, instantly. One frame to the next. From Okafor's face to something he could not describe. Something too tall. Something that shouldn't have fit inside a human shape. Harris fired twice. Sound effect, 2 shots. Then silence. The figure was gone. Sand, open desert, nothing. Harris and Daniel grabbed Martinez and ran. They reached the extraction point with 9 minutes to spare. They never found Okafor. The Army's official report listed Okafor as missing in action, presumed lost during enemy contact. His family was told he disappeared during a firefight. There was no mention of the radio voice. No mention of the figure on the ridge. No mention of the footprints that stopped mid-stride in open sand. Daniel spent 3 days in a military hospital. He was discharged from service 4 months after the end of the war. He never spoke publicly about what happened. The nurse's handwritten account, the one his story comes from, was corroborated in one detail by Martinez, who gave a private statement to a veterans counselor in 2003. He said the same thing Daniel said, that whatever was out there in the desert that night, it didn't try to kill them. It tried to separate them, one by one, lure them away from the group, into the dark, because that is what the Ghoul does. According to Bedouin tradition stretching back 3,000 years, the Ghoul does not attack groups. It is patient. It waits. It watches. It learns the faces and voices of those it hunts, and then one by one, it calls them away. In ancient Arabic folklore, the Ghoul was said to be capable of constantly changing form, but its true nature was always recognizable by one unalterable sign. The old Bedouin poets warned that The only defense against a ghoul was to strike it dead in a single blow. A second strike would only bring it back to life. Harris had fired twice. In early Arabic, the ghoul was treated as a feminine creature, said to dwell in cemeteries and uninhabited places, appearing to travelers in the guise of the familiar to lure them to their deaths. The Iraqi desert between the Euphrates and the Gulf, the land the Bedouin called Al-Ard al-Mahjura, had been a battlefield before, hundreds of times, over thousands of years. Every army that crossed it left its dead behind. And according to the oldest stories, things that feed on the dead never go hungry in places like that. They simply wait for the next war to bring them fresh company. Private Daniel Reeves died in 2019, Knoxville, Tennessee. Natural causes. He was 50 years old. The nurse who kept his statement asked that her name never be published. Corporal Harris has never spoken about that night. Not once. Martinez changed his phone number 3 times in the decade after the war. He told his counselor he did it because every few months he would get a call, no caller ID. And when he answered, he would hear his own voice on the other end, just breathing, and then hanging up. If you found this story unsettling, good. It was meant to be. There are places on this earth that humans have fought over for so long that something in the dark has learned to recognize us, learned our voices, learned our faces, and if you wandered far enough from the fire, it would call to you in a voice you trusted. Subscribe if you want to hear what waits in the dark. Next time, we go somewhere even older